Hey lovelies, I hope today is finding you joyous and healthy. As always, I'm Riley and this is Sex with Everyone. Today I'm talking with Mel in Salt Lake City, Utah, and they talk all about how they are non-binary and what that means to them, and how they were married for 7 years to a cis man and they came out as non-binary in their marriage and how that affected their marriage and their relationship moving forward. And they also talk about the different ways that they get gender euphoria from doing different rituals or different little things for themselves. In a world that is very binary, it's difficult for non-binary folks to find a healthy balance in not trying to pass in any circle, right? So it's very cool to listen to them discuss the little things that they do for themselves and their body to feel more and more comfortable in their space, in their identity, in their world. I will give a trigger warning. They do talk about sexual assault, but it's a very beautiful conversation, very healing, and I really welcome you to listen all the way through the interview. So I hope you stick around for that. I do want to talk about my Patreon. My Patreon is a way for you to be able to support me and this podcast and everything that I'm doing with it. One of the subscription levels that you can get is have an hour-long video call once a month with me personally. If you like the kind of conversations that I have and I just enjoy listening and talking and asking questions. I am not a trained therapist, but I am a friend. So if you think that's cool, then awesome. And if you don't want all that, that's totally fine too. There are other levels that you are able to just help cover costs and hopefully be able to one day pay somebody else to edit these episodes so that I can put out more and more episodes. I would love to go weekly sometime. So one of these days, I'll be able to do that. Thank you so much for being here with me, listening to these beautiful conversations that I have all the fucking time, because every single one is so wildly different than the next. I can't get over it. So anyway, without further ado, please join me as I talk about sex with Mel.
Hey.
It's been so good seeing you the last few days.
It has been surreal just how easy it is to start conversating with you again.
I know. We went to high school together in Indianapolis, and have I seen you since then?
I honestly don't think so. I was trying to think when you texted me originally, I was like, did we go to like a concert after high school? Like, I graduated before you did.
Yeah.
And I bounced to Heron not too long after. Uh-huh. So I swear it must have been.
And then you fucked off to Utah.
And then I fucked off to Utah. So like 2 years after. A year and a half after. So genuinely think it was in, our high school halls.
Wild.
In front of the library. It was probably literally the last time I saw you.
So crazy. And it's so crazy how like seeing you again after so long, and it feels like we've maintained like a significant relationship between over the last decade or whatever it's been. Like,
definitely. And for not having a whole lot of sustained conversation between. It's just
not at all.
It's sort of an energetic thing.
Isn't that funny how that happens?
It's the best.
I love it.
It's the best thing.
It's genuinely the best, yeah. So, I mean, how's Utah been, I guess?
Okay. Yeah, I came over in 2010.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of my painting degree at Heron and art school. And, I fell in love with a boy.
As you do.
As one does. And I fucked off to Utah. And, when I first got here, I was not too happy about it. It's a tough place. To be when you're queer. It's a tough place sometimes, and you've got to take some time to find your people. But, it's been 10, 12 years now, and I have finally found like a home here. Because it's now a choice.
Good.
It felt for a really long time it was more of just a thing I did. Mm-hmm. And now it feels much more intentional. And it's so beautiful here. We have anything from the beautiful Wasatch Mountains to the Red Rock down south.
Oh man, I was looking at the map, Google Maps just the other day.
Yeah.
There is a mountain peak called Gobbler's Knob.
Oh yes.
Have you done it? I've been meaning to ask.
I haven't. It's actually I'm a hiker and stopper, so I can never seem to get anywhere.
Fair enough.
I just like some little piece of greenery will stop me for an hour, so I never end. But I've heard of that. I have some friends that have climbed that.
Really?
Yeah.
I really want to. Just to
Gobbler's
say,
Knob.
I've peaked at Gobbler's Knob.
Get a t-shirt. They should really have like a souvenir shop somewhere. I'm just saying. I'd buy that tee.
Right.
But yeah, it's a beautiful place, and there are like little pockets of wonderful here and there, especially downtown Salt Lake City, which is where I live.
Yeah,
it's much more safe for people who aren't cis white LDS.
Have you seen it change in the time that you've been here?
So much.
Really?
So the city itself has changed because it used to be like a little bit of a smaller city. It was adorable coming in from Indianapolis, which is a very large city in the Midwest. It was just almost cute and quaint, not a whole lot of high rises. Like it was really sort of this sweet little town and lots of little local shops everywhere. And in the last 5 years, I would say it's sort of, California has drifted into Utah. And so with that comes a lot of great, diversity, but also comes the investment, like the high housing prices and the all sorts of stuff. But,
right, of course.
Yeah, the people, it's a little bit easier. I think it's starting to get easier to date here, which is because everyone sort of knows everyone in the queer pocket of Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
It's kind of incestuous. Like you realize, like, especially the not ethical non-monogamy group, like you will date somebody that has either currently is dating an ex-partner or has dated in like 2 partners ago. You know what I mean? Like the degrees of separation are very small here.
Oh yeah.
So.
I think that's true in almost any poly community.
That's fair. That's fair. We call it Small Lake City, though.
Really?
It's sort of a colloquialism. Yes, when you know somebody randomly, or there's like that degree of separation, we're always like, that's the colloquialism. Oh well, it's just Small Lake City, Yeah, it's pretty cute. We have our little things here.
Yeah.
But
so you got married right out of college?
So I was like my sophomore year.
Yeah.
I was in a relationship with them for a year, long distance. I was still at Heron, and then there was.
Oh, so he was here?
So he was here in Utah,
Okay.
and so we had grown up together as children. And then he moved out here when he was a teenager. We reconnected, and there was like a breaking point where we had been like, we can no longer do this long distance thing.
Right,
and so then I chose to move here,
Okay.
and then we got married very shortly after me moving here.
Okay. And what was that like, being married, especially at that age?
Yeah, I was not even, I think I turned 21 here. And it was a learning experience. I didn't know who I was. I knew I was bi, and I knew I was ethically non-monogamous. Yeah. I had no idea the journey that I would go on to become who I am now. And unfortunately, I had a lot of loss on that way. And 7 years of sort of a tough time figuring that out, kind of wandering around. It was good in a lot of ways. Like, again, I learned so much. I learned how to cohabitate with another human. Yeah. I learned what it is to compromise, how to talk through things. I also learned a lot of how I don't like how I respond, and just learning about who I am, how I respond to conflict. So it was really great, but it was also, the ending was tough.
Yeah.
They, after 7 years, in 2015, 2016, I got sober. In 2015, I'm an alcoholic. I got sober. And once I got sober, I had to make some real clear conclusions. I had to dig deep, and I realized I'm non-binary, and I was so worried to tell him. And my friends were like, it's fine. He loves you. Everything's gonna be fine. And not everything was fine.
Really?
And he basically said, I married a woman. And I said, in my own mind, I was like, you married me, you didn't marry a woman. Right. And I'm not a woman. Right. No. So I had actually relapsed not too long previous to this. And that's when I realized, like, I gotta tell my truth or I'll die. It got real clear. So I told my truth. And I didn't die. I'm living. I'm really grateful. I'm very sober to this day, but it cost me my marriage. So, yeah. Immediately after having it end, I had one of the most grueling years of my life, and it was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Really?
Yeah.
What happened?
So, well, I basically had like a grand. I had a degree in graphic design, and I had basically nothing else. So I had to build a life. I was told, growing up being perceived female or cultured female, like there was this expectation that I was going to be dependent on a male, for a long period of my life. And it was really just me discovering how badass and independent I really am and how I can pull shit together probably better than any of the men I dated. Yeah. So I started relying on myself and seeing just how beautiful and how wonderful my ability to grow was. So it was a grueling year. I basically took the first design job I could, which was like a production company or like a print company, doing just basic work. And I took a train that took about an hour every morning. I went from, like the top of, University, Utah, very north, took the train down to all the way down south to Draper, like every morning, got up at like 6 a.m., hoofed it, slept on couches, didn't have an apartment for a good solid, I think it was like 6 months. And eventually I got an apartment. Eventually I got to take my dog back. Eventually I built a life. So yeah, it was a hell of a year.
Yeah. But you got to prove to yourself how capable you are.
100%.
Yeah. And I think that's everything. That's absolutely everything.
I had the space to also, within the grief and the burning down, build something that is truly mine for the first time in my whole life.
Yeah.
I didn't have a faith guiding me. I didn't have a parent telling me or a partner telling me who I was. I really had to figure that shit out by myself. Yeah. And it was, I think it was the foundational for who I am in this moment. So.
Yeah. And not to take it too far back, but I am curious, like, what it was like trying to figure out who you are and your queerness while in I assume, monogamous marriage. And I know that his family, at least, is Mormon. So I didn't know if that, like, played on your relationship in any way, or the parameters that you had to work with in self-discovery within this marriage.
Great question. So I've always been ethically non-monogamous. So I went into the marriage saying, hey, I'm bi and I'm ethically non-monogamous.
Oh, you knew this in high school?
I knew this. Yeah, I knew this in college, like early college, actually. Cool. It's kind of when it started.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's fine. So apparently those are fine. And so we had like this very kind of tumultuous marriage with regard to relationship with non-monogamy. It sort of never really sat well in the marriage, quite frankly. We never found our like groove, so to speak, where it was like consensual and feeling non-resentful. Like there was always some underpinning energy there. And I'm kind of, I am very sorry that was something that I contributed to. It's great to look back and learn.
Yeah.
But for my queerness, actually, that non-monogamy was really, really instrumental, because if I didn't have that, I'm not sure. Maybe the marriage would have ended sooner. Maybe I would have gotten clarity sooner, or maybe I'd still be in it. I really don't know, because I had a trans partner. I think that was one real pivotal moment for me, because I realized that people were treating my trans partner differently. And so that, I think, in the back of my head, that started triggering questions about my own gender.
Oh, interesting.
And kind of it would be years later before I actually like handled my own gender. But, so I did have room to play with my gender and sexual identity within my marriage. It all still had this basis of, I have to keep it quiet because his parents are still LDS. My family also is LDS, but I'm very much out to my family. I was really grateful for the opportunity to do so once we ended our marriage, because then I could go, all right, okay, guys, I'm like super, super queer. I'm also trans, surprise. Because I had a conversation about how like he wasn't comfortable with me talking about it openly, because it put him in a negative, like in a difficult position with his family, being LDS Mormon, being conservative, and him still sort of having that relationship, like that more conservative viewpoint.
Yeah. Sorry, not to cut you off, but I don't know much about LDS Mormonism. So could you talk a little bit, just give me like a brief like overview of what their views, at least on like this particular topic?
This is caveat, this little asterisk. I have not been a member for since high school.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me what it is. I just as far as what their general viewpoints on queers and whatnot.
So especially in Utah, so I'm going to specify Utah LDS or Utah Mormon culture is very the norm here. Whereas I grew up in Indianapolis and it was we were a minority religious group. The principles are still the same, but culturally in Utah, just FYI, it's a huge, it permeates everything. They pray before their, I was watching it was like a Senate, like a state Senate meeting, and they prayed beforehand in a very LDS Mormon manner. So it permeates everywhere. But so the basic tenets are, there is one God. There are asterisks. There might be a heavenly mother involved as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's there's this almighty God. Yeah. We don't really talk about heavenly mother a lot. That's a topic people don't. Huh. There's a lot there. So there's a heavenly father and a heavenly mother. Yeah. And gender is predetermined before birth. So we all existed in a pre-life, right? And we were the same people presumably that we are now in terms of even down to our genitalia, because apparently I have a lot of feelings. Apparently that happens in a ghost world, in a spirit world. That makes so much sense. No. So anyway, our gender is predetermined, and then we choose. There's sort of this narrative around choosing our parents or choosing where we end up, and we come down to this earth, right? And we do believe in Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit as well. So there's that Trinity. We do believe that Jesus Christ was, resurrected, died for our sins. All that was, basic Christianity. But the biggest thing is the idea that these are specific rituals that you have to do to attain what's called celestial kingdom. So there's kingdoms. There's not heaven and hell. We got to get more complicated. So we got celestial kingdom, which is the top. And in order to be in the celestial kingdom, you have to go through all the correct rituals, which means going to the temple, which means being temple worthy, which means going through an interview process by which you have all of these very strict guidelines, including, no drinking of, the word of wisdom. You don't drink specific things like alcohol, right? You're sober, you're celibate until marriage, that sort of a thing. You get married in the temple and only in the temple with your partner who's also temple worthy. And once you do all of these things and you live a righteous life and you dedicate your time to the church, and 10% tithing or 10% of your income is tithed to the church. Once you do all that, then you go to celestial kingdom. And then they have the tiers. So I would be, because I'm no longer in the church and I'm also not, done any temple work or anything like that. There's the telestial and the terrestrial. The telestial's in the middle. That's where I would go because I'm just a regular old Joe Schmo. And then the terrestrial is more for, murderers, people who do major harm to people. And then there's outer darkness because there's no hell. But outer darkness can only be attained if you see God, basically, and deny him.
Oh.
So, that's the biggest thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you get a vision of Jesus or God in your dreams and you say, I don't know what that was. Yeah. Or,
And it is Mormonism where, am I saying that right?
Mormonism. Okay. LDS Mormonism.
It is Mormonism that they have polygamy as well, right?
So that's FLDS. So that's, back in the day they did. So back in Joseph Smith's, I did kind of gloss over the Joseph Smith, the person who sort of brought these, scriptures. There's a Book of Mormon in addition to the Bible. So there's two books. Yeah. He found the Book of Mormon. God gave him a revelation. He found a book buried in the dirt. I think it was in New York. And his name was Joseph Smith. And when he founded the original church, there was polygamy. And there was a lot of rationale around that. Yeah. But it was always one male and multiple females. Right. Okay. Right. And it was a very...
And it could never be the other way around.
No, never. Because there was one priesthood holder. He had power invested in him by God.
Oh,
so he was the head of the household and he had the priesthood.
Okay. So it's it's... more patriarchal bullshit, but 100%. To the next level.
Yes.
Is that but it did guys are more holier than thou,
pretty much. But it did introduce the idea of multiple partners.
Right.
Just say it.
Which I am interested in. So with it, is that, I don't know how true to the faith your ex-husband was, but like, was that potentially part of why he was like chill with non-monogamy?
No, great question. Actually, no, we both were not in the church. Like, even though like culturally he still kind of like ascribed to certain quiet, like sacredness of like keeping our lifestyle quiet. He was very much out of the church.
Oh, okay.
And I was very much out of the church.
Okay.
So, it wasn't quite like that. And if anything, I was more directed, like I had quite a few more partners than he did.
Yeah.
So, it definitely didn't seem to be influenced at all. In fact, it's actually interesting to sit here and talk about how that could have even influenced my non-monogamy, because I haven't actually really sat down and thought about how that train could have happened. Because I always thought it's very separate because of my queerness and the fact that was so patriarchal, like it felt very much like a power unit. Like there were, subservient women around one powerful male head. My non-monogamy dynamics felt very opposing to that. Yeah. Right. And so for me, I feel like I separated them in my mind. My non-monogamy was a much more queer, free, open exploration of who the hell I want to be, which was in rejection of the church and all their rigid gender norms. Yeah. Yeah.
Woo.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I don't remember the last time. I don't actually talk about my ex-faith a lot because there was a lot of trauma there.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. When you're raised in an environment where men are perceived as being heads and powerful, and you being perceived female, there was already a power relationship dynamic even when I was a young kid, and so you felt that, and I felt very sexualized from a very young age, both from people outside of the church and even people inside the church. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of experience with people having really horrible experiences with like sexual assault or other things within the church, and them keeping it quiet, right, or not really resolving it. And I do definitely think that power dynamic is a huge reason why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We're taught from a very young age that we're supposed to be subservient, which means just looking the other way when somebody says a certain thing or touches you a certain, just your shoulder a certain way. Yeah. Which I think a lot of people who are raised just even anywhere in this country with a body like ours, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
We experience it. But then you put yourself in a place where you're talking about God and spirituality and it's still happening. You start to wonder, like, is this my purpose?
Right.
And that fucks with your head, I think, more than anything.
Absolutely. Well, and also, like, on the flip side of that, not only are you questioning, is this my purpose, but men, on the other hand, are getting taught that yes, that is, and they can.
Yes.
In whatever capacity.
And they're not
by all means. And they're not
no repercussions.
Yeah.
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 Oh, well, a slap on the wrist.
Right.
So,
oh, yeah. Well, but boys will be boys.
Oh, but don't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So, you came out.
I did.
And your husband was like,
yeah.
Nah. And that really is why y'all get divorced?
So,
or was that just like,
so he might tell a different story.
Yeah.
But that is the story that I had, because we both agreed. Because I basically was like, we became this impasse where he was like, I married a woman. There was obviously some conflict. And then I was like, well, I'm out. Like, I'm out. I can't put the cat back in the bag. This is what it is. And so we just sort of came at this impasse where we were like, I remember saying, well, I guess we're divorcing.
Right.
Like, he couldn't, like, so
right.
It was a little tough. And I'm sure I will give him grace that there's, I'm sure, a whole other side to this story. But it definitely hit me that way.
Yeah.
And, it basically was like, it took me a while, but I, put in the papers and did all that work, and I was living there for a while, but, he then, had a partner immediately after. And so, that was very difficult for me because of the situation. It happened to be somebody who was kind of close to me at one point and active in their addiction. And so as a sober person, it was really dangerous for me to be around that. So I had to leave, and that meant couch surfing for a while.
Yeah.
So it was tough.
Has that rejection so hard that happened from someone that you were so close with, has that continued to impact you in any way, like after having that? Because that is like traumatic. That is a traumatic experience in my mind, at least. Like I would
thank you for seeing that, because I don't know if a lot of people saw that exactly the way it was when it went down, because absolutely it did.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The letting people in is having, like, it's one thing to be performative. I'm big, I'm loud, I'm sexy. Like, I love that. Mm-hmm. That's easy for me. Mm-hmm. The moment that I take them home to my sister, to my little nephew, to a world where they could really merge into my life, like my old partner did, my ex-husband, it gets hard. Because there's always that underpinning of like, what if they find, what if they found out some piece of information they couldn't live with, whether it be my gender, the fact that I want no children. That's also been another trauma point. I've lost partners over that. And so there's this feeling of like, they're going to find something out that's going to be too much for them. And then they're going to leave.
Yeah. Because
it's happened more than once. And it has been such a wonderful blessing in the pain, because it's really forced me to look at my priorities as well as my interior world and my inner peace. I can't control the actions of other people. They can choose to leave, just like I can choose to leave. Agency is so important. But that doesn't make me any less than because they choose to leave. That doesn't show that I am too much. It just means that I am not the right one, or that their circumstances isn't correct for the relationship. But for a long time, and I still have it, and you can kind of probably hear it in my voice. I have this deep seated fear of being too much. And I think it does actually influence my relationships, because I tend to break myself into pieces and have, multiple relationships. That way it feels like I can spread it across multiple people.
Yeah.
And that's how I've treated non-monogamy in the past. Mm-hmm. And in the present going forward, I'm trying to pick up those pieces. And I've been more identifying with like solo poly, which is this beautiful, empowering relationship with myself. That's my first and foremost priority. Mm-hmm. I really love my alone time. I really love going to the garden by myself, And then any relationships that come into that, whether it be one, so it looks a little monogamous, it has a little, spice flavor there, or multiple, whether one's just sexual, one's just like emotional, like however that works. But I'm really trying to grow from a place of I am too much, therefore I must break myself down into pieces. Instead, I really want to be, I am enough with myself as I am. And if you choose to come in, I am delightful. And if you choose not to, it wasn't meant to be. But that is a tough change to make.
That is a massive, shift in everything. I mean, it's a total mentality shift, but I mean, that certainly is the healthiest.
I'd like to think
healthy is fucking hard, though.
Oh my God. It is so much easier to just sit in the fear and the want and the desire and the grasping But I would say I'm ultimately so much happier now that I've, you know what I mean? Now I've come full circle with that. Mm-hmm. And I no longer feel I need to break myself into pieces.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about this yesterday, but I would love to talk about it some more, of how you do different ritualistic things for your gender affirming aspects for yourself to feel whole and feel comfortable, and the way that you've, again, shifted your mindset around how you take care of yourself.
Yeah. So with being non-binary, I have big tits. I have really curvy hips, and I have this very femme face. There are certain things that I've sort of come to accept about my body. There's not really an end transition point for me. If it was crazy modded alien, that's probably the closest transitional. I'm not kidding. Like, I for a long time I wanted like the black eyeballs, and I just got the sclera contacts, and that made me feel really great in my body. So sometimes it's these small things that aren't, it's not chest surgery, it's top surgery, it's nothing huge or hormones or what have you. Sometimes for me, it's really small things. Yeah. So it could be sclera contacts that make me feel a little alien. Oh God, that makes me feel, that's gender euphoria for me, which, you know what I mean? So there's not really a target. Like, I'm not trying to be, a cis dude. I'm not trying to pass anywhere. Right. Except for maybe if I go out into outer space, I'd like to pass, with the aliens. But that's the goal. No, but so because of that, I've sort of had to find creative ways of finding body and gender euphoria. And for me, there's some of the traditional ways, right? Like, I wear a binder occasionally. I switch outfits. I do really, really high pastel femme. And then I do like super mask, like suit, and collar. I can do, I use all the trappings I think a lot of us use, but some things are like the sclera are very specific. And then also tattoos are a really great venue for exploration and comfort in my body. And then also I just got my tubes removed. So I no longer have children, and that was extremely euphoric for me because I always felt like not something I wanted and something that kind of made me feel strange and not at home. Yeah. So now I feel very at home that I have a body that's incapable of producing a child. Yeah. So, so I have a couple tattoos that I
no, but about your surgery that you just had. I saw that on Instagram. Oh, yeah. When that happened, and it was phrased as a gender-affirming surgery, and I had never seen that before with that particular surgery, and that just, it gave me chills when I saw that. Thank you for that, and thank you for sharing that was your experience with that particular surgery and what it meant to you. Yeah. And I just so appreciated everything about that, and I just think that's fucking rad. Thanks. To have it in that context.
Well, and I think for me, it was, I had joked that I wanted a no baby shower. My sister, and I are very, very close. Yeah. And I came out to her first, and she's been good. You want to talk about allies. Yeah. She has been, and she's still in the church. This is the bizarre thing. She is LDS, and yet she holds so much space for me. Aww. She is my biggest ally and advocate. And so we have become extremely close. I know, it's strange. Yeah. It's strange how, juxtaposing, we've had lots of philosophical, debates and things like that. But at the end of the day, love rules all, and unconditional love. And she has taught me that not everyone is going to drop me when they find out the whole of me. Yeah. And she has affirmed that. Yeah. And so forever, her and my nephew, her son, are forever going to be, my favorite people. But so I was joking to her. I was like, okay, we didn't actually get married. Like, we didn't have a wedding when I got married. It was just like at the county hall. So I haven't had any of these really cool celebration that all these cis people get.
Classic traditional.
Like, I haven't had a wedding. Yeah. I haven't had a baby shower. I haven't had like a big anniversay party. I had nothing. I didn't even get a honeymoon. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? I want a party. And so I was like, at least I want a cake. Okay. It's all about the food for me. So I was like, I just want a cake. And so I was joking. I said, I want a no baby shower. And she ran with it. So we had to get it postponed. It's coming actually this weekend, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so you can attribute that gender affirming. That was actually language that she used in the invite.
Oh, cool.
So she specifically used a certain kind of language, and she did this whole design. She bought this really nice invitation, and it was really cute. It says no gender, no baby, because it was a baby shower invite that had rainbows. Yeah. And instead of and on the back it said congratulations on a nothing. Yeah. Because
amazing.
And so it was so funny. She turned this very gender, very, a specific kind of, and something that's usually a baby shower is a very gendered thing, right? Oh yeah. So it's such a fun inverse. Yeah. So that's, thank you to my sister. Yeah. Thank you to my sister, because that language, I don't think I would have asked for help, financial help, if she hadn't put the language, this is a gender affirming surgery. Because in some way in my brain that meant, oh, okay, I can ask for help. It was such a strange shift. And
that is interesting.
It is. But so that language is all kudos to my sister. Shout out.
So good. And you were saying also that getting your hair and your nails done in the ways that you do them is also very gender affirming for you.
100%. So I have, an undercut so I can pull it up and it can be masked at any time. And then I have so much hair that I can pull it down and it actually looks like just a regular bob, like a femme bob. So that versatility is super important to me. I love getting it done super fresh every time, like the fresh cut, and then also my nails, it's somewhat juxtaposed because they are like, I have these nice gel, long, pointy. They're actually really sharp. I get like the really stiletto because there's that sort of contrast. There's the, this is an object of beauty, but I could gouge your eyeballs out. And that's that kind of sweet and sharp that I think with my gender, I really explore with my gender euphoria is having both sides of that coin. So it's been fun finding what works and not letting myself put myself in a box, because for a long time I wouldn't put nails, I wouldn't wear nails even though I loved them because I was trying really hard to be more mask. I was trying to be non-binary enough. I was trying to be trans enough for several years. Yeah. And then the pandemic hit. And I just tried to, literally it was survival. Yeah. And then it was really beautiful to see what rituals I turned to. Yeah. So, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. I love that.
It's also super creative. I mean, it's just how many designs can you put on your nails? You know what I mean? And the clicky clack. You gotta love the clicky clack. It's sensory.
Yeah.
Neurodiversity.
Yeah, and I love like the scratchy as well. Like
Ajax loves it. Ajax is my dog, and he loves the fresh nail scritches. Yeah, he does.
Yes, he does. Look at that.
He's so cute. Yeah. Ritual, I think, is extremely important when you're trying to build a life, when you have no blueprints. Nobody told me how to live in this body when it felt strange and uncomforting. Yeah. And so I've built my own rituals, including, my meditations, my journaling, and my reading. And all of those are also, I would say foundational. They're not things that I do to my body, but they are foundational to my mental and heart, health. And I think that is also foundational to, becoming home to myself, right? A home to myself. So, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
Well, and that reminds me of the tattoo that you got recently, your womb tattoo, and how that was very much part of your journey of like getting more comfortable with your body. And I would love to hear like what you have to say about that.
Yeah.
Because it is beautiful.
Yeah. So the tattoo artist is the amazing Ashes Bardol. I hope I'm saying that right, Ashes. But she is fantastic. We have done quite a few pieces together. And so she's gotten to, and we talk about spirituality and gender and huge topics while she's sitting there tattooing. It literally is a ritual in and of itself. Oh. It is one of the most beautiful things, I think, like ever, right? Like it's not like any other tattoo experience I've had. So I felt very comfortable based on our previous pieces and our conversations that she would be the perfect person to design this womb tattoo. And the premise, I was really scared about this tattoo. But the premise is I think actually my religious background might have had something to do with this, because I wanted something that covered the area of which I felt there was a deficit or a missing. And I felt like the womb area just felt a little not like mine, not owned, like by me. It felt very much mine. And so,
sorry, real quick.
No, you're fine.
Do you mean missing a penis?
Yeah.
Or is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, okay. Like missing unit there, but also just sort of like the sensation, like, and everything that comes with that, right? The sensation, and things like that. But yes. To be nice and clear, yes.
I just wanted to be sure I was understanding.
100%. Okay. Yes, it doesn't happen often, but when I do have, like, it's very dysphoric for me to wear a strap on sometimes, because I'm just reminded to which degree I don't have one and what's, the sensory and things. So, it's still a journey for me. That piece is still real raw. And so I think this tattoo I just got not too long ago. So I think this is the first step in trying to really look at that and find my space there. So it's a design that is a biblical representation, like a literal interpretation of an angel. Mm-hmm. Specifically, it's the like a seraph that's all wings and eyes, and it's genderless. It is divine. It is one of the closest angels to God or the divine, right? And there's this essence of like divinity, and my spirituality is intrinsically linked to my gender identity, just because I have a lot of feelings about gender, possibly because of my background. But I told Ashes, I feel more like a beam of light than male, female, human. Like I feel very much linked to like a lightning bolt, or like even like a dew on a a spring day. Like I don't particularly, I don't identify with this body very, very often. Mm-hmm. And so I had articulated this motif with the light specifically. And there's a lot of, parallelism and symbology regarding, angels and light and God and divinity. And, there's so much there in art history. And she came up with the most perfect illustration. I had told her I kind of loved like the black and red of like illustrated manuscript, right? So I wanted something that still kind of had that call to not Christianity, but like that divinity and the illustrated manuscript stuff. And so she had this great illustrate that it fit my womb perfectly. The wings go out and like curl under my belly in the most perfect way. And she had some light motifs in there without me asking, without any kind of discussion. She just knew that this was a piece that meant so much to me, that it was more about my identity than the actual image. Yeah. And so she just put these beautiful light motifs in there, and it was perfect. I can't imagine the tattoo being any better than it is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you showed me a picture of it, and it is fucking stunning. It is so beautiful.
It was a lot of pain. It was a lot of hours. It's a very sensitive area, but I look down now and that area looks correct. Like it looks, I feel safe with it. And I think a lot of it also has to do with the act of tattooing this piece. Was the first session, I think it was a 4-hour session. I was basically, I chatter. I'm a chatterbox. And me and Ashes talk all the time. But that session was one of the quietest tattoo sessions I've ever had, because we were both sort of soaking in the significance of the piece. And it became almost this healing ritual. The second session was more, business as usual. But I think that just introductory phase, it's a very vulnerable position. I basically had my knees spread, and she's there tattooing. And one of the most,
she's all up in it.
She's all up in it. Yeah. And so the trust there, the implicit safety.
Yeah.
Was really significant. And they say she said, and I think other people mentioned, that you hold a lot of trauma in your hips. And so going in, I didn't even think about how transformative that experience would have been for me as someone who has, been a sexual assault survivor. Like having someone there, you know what I mean? So close in such a intimate location, being vulnerable for such a long time, and kind of in public too, mind you.
Yeah.
We had like a nice little shield or whatever, but it's still like a very vulnerable, but still proceeding forward and really trusting the process and the person. We both started crying at different parts where we were just overwhelmed by the kind of healing energy. And I was struck, while I was there, I was struck about how I hadn't even thought about this tattoo being almost like a seal, like a magical seal or protection sigil, of like, this not only is my body, but that I get to choose who enters it. I get to choose who gets to touch me. I get to choose all these things, which has not always been the case. Yeah. And I just had no idea until it happened just how healing that was going to be. And so now it's imbued with not only all of these gender implications, but all of these beautiful protection. It almost feels like it feels like a dual sigil that we both powered together for. And now I have this beautiful piece on my body where I feel so much safer.
Yeah. Not only is it gender affirming, but it's like armor.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Like a magical scroll that will come out and, I don't know, get you if you try to fuck with me. Karma is a bitch, okay?
That is amazing. Yeah. Oh.
It's powerful. It was one of the most powerful moments, I would say, in my life.
Yeah.
And then it went viral on Twitter, and it was fucking hilarious. Because it was like all these people like that I didn't know was like commenting on this really sacred thing, and I was like, "Oh, this is fine. This is fine. This is fine." It was generally positive, but Ashes does a great job of like having a great community. But it was such a juxtaposition of like this deep spiritual, significant, and then pop culture, Twitter culture.
You can't escape it.
No,
sorry.
Honestly, I loved it. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
So.
If it's okay for me to ask, and it's totally fine if you don't want to talk about it, but you said that you're a sexual assault survivor. Mm-hmm. Do you mind talking about like what happened?
Yeah. So I can count the most recent and prevalent in my mind. I have some trauma that actually I don't have retrieved. I've lost most of my childhood memories. And so I've gotten some of them back, which is wonderful. But I will recount, I think what I'll do is I'll recount how I realized that I'm missing part of my assault story. And then I'll kind of briefly review the most recent one. But so I was doing EMDR therapy, which is basically like they use eye movement and then also some like tactile things, like they're pulsing little eggs with pulsars to sort of like retrain certain trauma moments or to access other information. And it was early in my EMDR sessions. It was a new therapist. I wasn't really sure. And honestly, it turned out that she wasn't a great therapist. She was actually really unsafe. So what happened is that we advanced too quickly.
Yeah. That's actually a weirdly common story with that kind of therapy.
Well, and now I know.
Yeah.
And so what happened is she meant to just sort of do a general overview. And with someone with my kind of trauma, you can't do a general overview. You have to start really foundational. Yeah. And then you can proceed with like going down the rabbit hole. But instead we jumped right in. And so what happened is that I started having... They would ask me there were some like statements and questions. Like we went over like RAIN, the acronym RAIN, right? And we went all these... We talked a lot about a lot of things, but the most important and relevant day, we were talking about body sensations, and like we would talk about a thing, and then she would ask me what I was feeling in my body, and somehow we got on the subject of this particular man who was adjacent, like he was in my familial circle, or he was like brought in by a family member, and somehow I don't even know how he breached the subject. I'm sure it had something to do with just a train of thought somewhere. And I realized in that moment that I had never talked about him once during therapy. And I've been in therapy since I was 14 years old. And at that time I was like 28. So like over 10 years of therapy, and I've never mentioned his name once. And that sort of hit me. It hit me in my gut that something was wrong. Like when I said his name, something felt wrong. And then we proceeded to go through and try and articulate what was happening in my body. And I disassociated. I split like I have disassociated quite a lot in my life, but only of a severe degree when talking about very specific subjects. And so it becomes very clear that something happened, right? But I can't articulate what happened. Right. But I do know now at least who it was surrounding. Yeah. Do I know if it happened to myself? I do know for a fact that this person also harmed another member of my family. Yeah. And did I witness something, or was it directed at me? I don't know. Yeah. Did he assault me? I don't know. And I may never know. Yeah. But it was early enough and foundational enough and close enough to me that it was, before I was a teen. Prepubescent? Yeah. Right. It was early.
Right.
And so don't know what the cause was. I don't know what the pinpointed item is. And I used to fixate on that, but I don't quite as much anymore. And it's something that we don't talk about as a family. We don't talk about this, we don't talk about it. And so it's interesting to talk about it. The only time I usually talk about it is with very close family members or therapists. Yeah. So I'll leave that there. And then the most recent one was another interesting, someone else in my family brought this person. It was somebody who was very close, had a relationship with this person. And we got really trashed. My husband was there and my family members, we were in the same apartment. And what happened is I thought I could I'm an alcoholic, right? And I was very deep in my alcoholism at the time. So I thought I could outdrink, a very large man with tequila. I was like, yeah, I got this. No, I did not get this. So what happened is I ended up in the bathroom with him. And he was supposedly taking care of me, right? While I was throwing up, which I definitely was. But it ended up becoming a situation where he was trying to take advantage of me. And fortunately, he was very drunk and we pursued. And I was trying to kick him off and everything. But, that there was harm still done. And yeah, I'm grateful that it didn't escalate to the point of like my physical body. Like I didn't have to go to the hospital. I was very grateful for that. But it was... even now I'm quantifying it because that is how we do.
That is
I will always quantify it because it's just one of those things that no matter how evolved or through it you think you are, you still have a weird narrative around it. It's a tough narrative. Forgiving yourself for getting drunk, forgiving yourself for not yelling, forgiving yourself for all of these things. But, I ended up getting out of stumbling quite comically out of the bathroom and, the most wicked hangover in the world. And then I was able to, sort of find safety the next morning and, talk to my husband. I was married at the time and talked to my husband about it and we were able to get out of the situation. But I also do think that did also have an impact on my marriage.
Really?
Just because I think in terms of, I think men don't realize how, powerless they are. I think that moment of being powerless really changed him. And also not necessarily how he saw me, but just how he saw himself in relationship to me. So it was tough. And we've had some conversations, my ex-husband and I, about it. And there's still that, I wish I could have. I wish I could have, and I acknowledge that was not just a trauma for me.
Yeah.
There was other trauma there. And I won't speak on it for him, but that was, yeah. So yeah, that was, back in Indiana. I had just moved out here. We had gotten married, you know what I mean? And I tried to go visit home and it was a great trip, but it was one of the earlier days in the trip. So I basically was just disassociated. I was not there for the entirety trip. And so then I just didn't go back for a lot of reasons. But I just didn't go back to Indiana for a really long time.
Yeah.
Didn't talk to my family for a really long time either.
Really?
Yeah.
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 How is your relationship with your family? How did that evolve since then? It sounds like you guys are great now, but I mean, how long did it take, for that?
Certain members of my family and I are close. Mm-hmm. The person in question who brought the person harm, I actually had to get drunk to tell them over Facebook Messenger, a year later, maybe not a year later, maybe 6 months later, what happened. Cause I couldn't face them. And she was livid. She actually, I won't tell her business, but she basically, she tried to protect me after the fact. Let's just say that she got into some trouble because of it. But it was very much, there was a moment of did you ask for it? There was definitely that moment.
Sure.
And so I had to navigate fuck you to this person. And then once they realize the nature, they themselves are also understand the nature of sexual assault. So it's a very strange little thing. It's almost something that we shared in a weird way. And so our relationship, it took that person getting sober also, for us to start bonding again. Cause it was just too painful for me.
Yeah.
It was just, they were a reminder.
Yeah.
But then they had this beautiful moment where I could show up for them because I was sober and they were sober. And I really just wanted to participate in that. And so recently, we're not super, super close, but she does know that I'm here. So that's that relationship in particular is taking some time. My relationship with my sister who lives here, that we have such a great relationship. When I came out, that was the beginning of our really closeness, right? And so I just assumed everyone was going to reject me like my partner had rejected me. So I just assumed I would never talk to my family again, or at least not have a real meaningful relationship with them. And I was proven wrong. I do not have contact with my mother. And I'm repairing. I also have a past of other abuse. And so me and my father, it took us a while. He's made amends for his actions. And we have a great relationship now, which is really transformative because it shows me what growth looks like. It shows me that humans are humans, that, we are all capable of some really intense harm.
Yeah.
And on that note, just we were talking about sexual assault. I really want to give a balanced view because when I was active in my addiction, one of the things I had to make amends for was there was a night when there was this band member, and I have a very machismo, like I have a very like, I'm like super sexual. I'm like super aggressive. I'm like, and so there was this night where I was, there was a band, there was a show. The lead singer invited me back to where they were staying, and I had a huge crush on one of the guitarists, I think. Anyway, me and the guitarist ended up in a room, and I ended up like almost raping this man. And when I was sober, but I was still in my alcoholic, phase. But that really showed me, especially when I was doing my amends once I got sober, to have the ability to reflect on my own choices. This narrative of violence and sexuality being so enmeshed in my life early on really informed how I was also treating people. Like it wasn't just this happened to me. This was a language that I learned.
Right.
And I was then articulating. And now it made sense to me how a human being could do this. And that was forgiving myself for that. I think it was the key. Yeah. It was the key for me to understand how I could forgive others and to forgive myself for what happened to me before. And so, I wanted to include that because I think it's so paramount to my sexual assault story that I was a victim and I was a perpetuator, was both. And I'm glad that I had the sense of mind to snap out of it before I did real damage, but I would still characterize it as an assault just based on the pressure and the sort of lack of consent. What is that when you're the coercion element, right? Based on that, I would definitely characterize it as sexual assault. So,
if you don't mind me asking, like, what was your like mindset while in the middle of that?
Power.
Yeah.
Like not directly, like I didn't think it was, but what I really wanted was I wanted the attention of the singer who had brought me home. And so this was one, and I wanted this attention from this guitarist, and he kept kind of negating my advances. And so I was like the one person who didn't want me. That's what I wanted. And so just because I wanted that control, I wanted to feel powerful. And also there were people around me giving me that. They were like, I was in the shower. There was a little bit of, even in that night, one of the person who lived there, like opened up the bathroom when I was showering, and they were like, everybody, oh my God, they have the best tits. And so that moment, again, being faced with this like really non-consensual moment, there was a narrative that was being built up around me, around my body, around, how like fucking sexy and cool I am, or whatever it was that I chose to latch on to cope with the sexualization. If I can control how people are sexualizing me, then I have the power.
Yeah.
And if I've been sexualized all of my life since I grew tits in like 4th grade, if I can control that, then maybe maybe it's fine. Maybe I'm fine. Maybe this is fine. Maybe I'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so that was a mindset going in that night. And I think I just took it too far. I just kept pushing. I just wanted. And then I snapped and I go, there was a literal moment where I was like, oh my God, if I don't stop right now, I am the same as the people who did this to me.
Yeah.
And I just I fucking ran out of that room,
Yeah.
But it was sobering.
Yeah.
It's fucking sobering.
Did you ever see him again after that?
No, so they were a band that was touring, and I was working at Hot Topic at the time, and so no, I had to make my amends other ways, which means, I wrote a letter, I think, and, just articulating how sorry I was and all these other things. And then promised myself going forward that I would examine my relationship to control and violence and with regard to like sexual acts and going forward, make amends by doing better.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And how is that gone?
Oh, it's interesting because as someone who does like kink, it's like,
right.
Where is that line? No, I think for me anyway, it was really understanding the control aspect, and the consent aspect. So now that I know that I enjoy certain control aspect, now that I'm aware of these things and I am aware that there's a venue for these things to happen consensually, that's wonderful. I don't think I really had the language at this time. I was still pretty young and I got married young.
Who does have the language at that time?
This also occurred actually before my first assault. So that was back in college. That was back in Indiana.
Oh.
Where I was, with the band members. That was... I was working at Hot Topic downtown.
But like, we're just not taught the language of boundaries or consent or anything. So it's like, who does, you know, until we're adults and
so I was really young.
Avenues.
I was really young at the time. And I think I just literally had no idea how to articulate this. So so now I really, you know, consent is key, you know, and
absolutely.
I always check in, and there's a lot of things that I do to try and understand my relationship to it. And to violence specifically with regard to sex. But then there are some times where I have to snap out of a scenario and I go, okay, guys, I can't, like, you know, I say my safe word and, you know, I have to collect myself either because I feel like I'm myself crossing a boundary or it reminds me of that moment or vice versa. And that will always be with me. Like, I don't think that's ever going to leave. I think what's going to have to happen is just, you know, conversation with regard to that with my partners. And most of them have been super understanding about it. It hasn't been a problem at all. So,
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Because that's amazing. And that's something that no one ever talks about.
Yeah.
Right? How, I mean, either side of the coin, really, but especially being the perpetuator. Yeah. And I really, really appreciate you being willing to discuss that because it's so important.
It's also important to realize men can get raped.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, by people who have vaginas. Like, and I very nearly did. And so that's why I want the conversation is because I want to, you know, validate all sexual assault survivors in whatever, you know, situation that they were in is just as valid. And there is no difference. Absolutely zero. Not one is better or worse than. There is no difference.
Yeah.
So.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you. This is tough, but really, really good to talk about.
We are hitting about an hour. Is there anything else that you want to like discuss? We can keep chatting as long as you want, but you know, just kind of checking in with where you're at.
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot of shit. We would.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
And we like went in the skeletons. We were like, hello, which is really great because quite frankly, the opposite of shame is openness. You know what I mean? The opposite of fear and shame is like that they can't survive in space. So the more space that we give our shame, the more it transforms from shame into just reflection. Yeah. And so thank you for the opportunity.
How else are we supposed to grow? Right?
100%.
Like without examining ourselves and acknowledging when and where we have fucked up, as well as learning from, you know, other experiences that we've had. Like it's all trying to push forward and trying to be a better person than we were the day before, right?
100%. Exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mel, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you for having me and thanks for asking very provocative and wonderful questions.
Anytime.
I love you so much.
I love you.
Oh, this has been great.
Just wow. Mel is a true firecracker and I love them so deeply. I really am so thankful to them for opening up so much. I was caught by surprise that they decided to discuss how they have been a perpetuator of abuse themselves in the past and how that allowed them to have perspective on the abuses that they had experienced as well. That is so incredibly powerful. I'm so humbled and blown away that somebody would be willing to talk about it openly like that, because it literally never is ever talked about. I think it's such a valuable perspective for everyone to hear, to have some level of understanding around, so that we can all do better and help one another, right? And I just love them so much for putting it out there and also working on themselves. They are continuously working on themselves every day and trying to be better. And it's just so beautiful. So thank you, Mel, for just being your radiant self and being your radiant self with me always. As always, I do have a Patreon. I would love for you to check it out. It is patreon.com/sexwitheveryone, and you are able to throw me $5 a month to help me out with the project and hopefully someday be able to attain my goals with becoming a weekly episodic podcast. So I appreciate you no matter what. Next episode, I will be chatting with Curious in Reno, Nevada, and they get into how they are in their 40s and are just now in the last year or two realizing that they are queer and how that is absolutely rocking their life. It's a really beautiful story that I hope you tune in for in 2 weeks. I hope you're enjoying your summer so far and all that is within it. So until we speak again, stay awesome, friends.